So the first is a company called ACSIS, ACSIS Employee Health Records, which basically was a company that dealt with software technology and databasing, where it had existing systems and was seen to be a world leader in the type of work that it did. And it got a contract in Central America with the country of Belize. And it had various database and computer science challenges due to a limited infrastructure, where certain areas or nodes may be offline for intermittent amounts of times or have different bandwidths or unpredictable types of things, which when you're doing a distributed database can create different problems. How do I store data? How do I replicate data? Where do I need to replicate data? A series of issues, or potentially experimental models that one would have to work with to achieve different objectives. The key issues in here were whether there's advancement, technological advancement, and related systematic investigation were the issues that the CRA said were absent. So what we're told, looked at available sources of replication for different purposes and different connectivity structures. So they did a due diligence analysis. They didn't go in and say, well, we don't know anything about this, we'll start from scratch. They said, what solutions are already out there or methods are available for us to go in and deal with the limited bandwidth and connectivity problems that are addressed here. They then, having looked at that, identified weaknesses on methods to exchange, deal with different nodes, so different methodologies they could use to handle that, and how to deal with queues of data with different levels of disconnectivity, which might be short, maybe intermittent, maybe days at a time or hours, and how to deal with that in an optimal manner to still provide a reasonable level of reliable data. So they specified different approaches to transport the data, to either preserve and merge changes, at what time, how often, frequency. They dealt with multiple databases at multiple locations with frequent interruptions, were some of the issues and variables that we're doing. Now, the court case precedents don't publish all of the supporting data or tables, so you've got to infer a lot of what happened in these cases. A lot of what you look at is the judge's analysis and the judge's ruling. So the judge basically said that, according to him, there was no appropriate replication sources. And that was a key issue, that they did a reasonable amount of due diligence at the start of the day, and they were forced then to do experimental development to deal with issues on a weak communication infrastructure. Now again, what are the longer-term implications? And I'm going to say this about tax cases in general as I start, that I used to think that tax cases had a significant precedence and that we could rely on them a lot. And more and more I'm finding that the CRA reviewers, when you deal with them, don't want to deal with tax cases or issues, or absolutely blatantly refuse to discuss any tax cases in any way whatsoever. So given that, I'd say, well, ultimately they'll tell you at the objection stage, or if you don't agree, that you can go to tax court. That's your right. And if you would have talked to me 2 years ago, or even last year, I would say, yes, by this time today, I'm going to be talking about a whole series of really great precedences that I've got lined up. My clients are going to smash the CRA. We're going to teach them. And in those cases, the CRA, right before court, said, you know what, you were right. We were wrong. We're going to settle. We're going to give you all your money. And we're going to pay all your legal fees. Not what we, like all of them. So we're not going to get any precedents. All the strong cases are going to wait a year or two. And did the client really win? Well, it took it 2 or 3 years maybe to get there. And in the meantime, they stopped claiming, so they probably missed a full year of claims. So nobody really won here. So this is one of the ones that went in. I believe it was informal appeal, so it went fast. It got through. They didn't settle, but it doesn't provide a lot of evidence. There's a lot of claims, I feel, that are going through or getting denied that have very strong evidence, are very strong SR&ED, but we're not going to get the precedence on them if the CRA keeps settling at the settlement stage. So we need statistics on, to make this really work and the tax court really be an effective way of measuring or monitoring the system, to not only say the ones that went through and won what was good about them, but to actually look at some of the ones that are being challenged. And we'll talk a little bit towards the end about proposals in there to create a system where that happens. So my summary here, having said that at a very high level, is that there's a lack of specific detail on what they did. the judge kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt, I'd say. I can't take a lot from this and say there's concrete things here, or repeatable tests, or anything that is of a long-term nature that really says this is a very strong case. So I'd say it's of minor or moderate significance, other than the fact that they did the due diligence, they identified specific problems, and the courts have been relatively lenient with the taxpayer. Okay. So an example of what I call the key criteria on this one. Did they do benchmarks? Yes, they looked at different articles. They looked at competitive products. They don't tell us how many, but we'd have to infer they had some. They tried to provide quantifiable objectives, CPU hardware limitations, fault tolerances, things like that. They identified variables of uncertainty, the node and master behavior, how to deal with sequences and subscriptions. They don't provide a lot of evidence, but at least it's something, right? So you can look at how much work they did and whether that related to a technological advancement.